I agree with you, Justin. I think marriage is an L, especially for men. I mean, you're an incredibly successful guy, and I think you previously stated, hey, look, I didn't get to my position in life to marry someone and it be a liability where she could potentially
change your mind.
My shit.
Yeah,
and
no fucking way.
So I agree with you there, and especially, I mean, with stats as they are, I think it's something like 80% of marriages end in divorce. 50% of marriages end in divorce. 80% of those are initiated by women. So men are disproportionately impacted by the negative, it's almost entirely negative outcomes of divorce. So Chase, I know we've kind of had a back and forth on the whole marriage thing, and I think kind of my point is that you could have a long-term, even life partner with someone and not get married to them. And I mean, I think the two things I'd point to recently, granted this one isn't as strong of a case as I previously thought, but you look at, for example, what happened with Steven Crowder. Now there's been some videos that came out and that don't exactly paint him in the most flattering light, but Steven,
it makes it easy to understand why his wife would leave. Yeah.
Now, granted, it's a 3-minute clip of an otherwise multi-year long marriage. People have bad days. He doesn't look good. Granted, he does not look good in that moment. But you look at the context of his marriage. They were both virgins, both religious. Even they got divorced. We have you. You're a
but Brian, I gotta say something. Hold
on. You're ex-pastor. I imagine you were quite pious when you were a pastor. You got married, I assume, to a pious man. Were you when you got married? Were you both virgins? I don't know if that's too prying, but
no, we were not.
But you were both deeply religious, and so I look at that, and I look even at a deeply religious person where. There's people who are agnostic or who are secular who get married, and it would occur to me that people that are religious have even at least logically you would think, well, there's the religious component to marriage, so those are potentially stronger. But you look at, and I looked at the data. I think religious people edge out secular people a little more in terms of staying together, but. It still ain't looking great, even for people who are religious.
Brian, the data on people who are actually attending church and they take the religion seriously, they don't just call themselves Christian. There's a big difference in those data sets versus the people that actually take it seriously, right? And to call her marriage pious or to call Crowder's marriage pious is not actually fair to people that are truly honoring what the Word of God tells us to do. For example, no offense, but female pastor. Not living in alignment with the Word of God, right? Paul was clear. We're not supposed to have female pastors. Okay, so that's not an example of piety. Steven Crowder, right? The way that he was speaking to his wife. Look, it's one moment in time. It's 3 minutes. There's no way to extrapolate that out to the rest of their lives with certainty. But if those 3 minutes were a representation of the rest of the way that he was approaching his marriage, it's like. That's not how we're called to treat our wives when we're serious about our walk with Christ. He was speaking to her in a very aggressive and I don't know, man, she was just asking to use the car and go get groceries and stuff. And the way he was speaking to her was so condescending and rude, and he was treating her like shit. You know what I mean? It's I watched that clip and I'm like, I'm not surprised she wanted to leave him. If I was a woman and I had been with a guy like that for years and he had been treating me like that for years, I'd be like, yeah, I probably, want to get out of this marriage, right? It's it's verbal abuse, but there's a difference between that versus somebody who is actually striving to live by the tenets of the Word of God and who is loving their wife as he loves himself and who is sacrificing for her and who treats her gently and with compassion. And if the wife is doing the same to her husband and she's, submitting to her husband and she's loving him effectively and she follows his leadership and he is a good leader, you're going to have totally different marital outcomes with couples like that, right?
Well, and it's really interesting because when they do studies about sexual satisfaction for women, they find that women who are married in monogamous, faithful marriages and they are going to church regularly, weekly, share that they have the highest sexual satisfaction.
And super low divorce rates.
That is so
super low divorce rates.
There's so much data out there that women get more orgasms and more pleasure from women than they do to men.
But that's because that man is probably not a good lover to them. That's
Yeah,
what
that's
about.
the majority of the situation.
But that's
So if
because
they're
but the
saying,
man needs to learn to see. That's the beauty of a lifelong marriage. It's like you learn to love each other, not just like in doing chores for each other or doing fun things together, but in how you have sex. You learn to really love each other.
Like,
so
by
what do you do if
communicating.
one
Lifelong
partner,
marriage.
what do you do if one partner has a high libido and one partner has a low libido?
Well, you work through that. You
So
work through
one
that
has
together.
to starve sexually and one
No, you
feels guilty
you
for
actually
not.
sacrifice.
Are you
There's
speaking
sacrifice
to,
involved.
like, was that the case in your marriage?
No, but I just know examples where men like either gender, one gender's like, I have no drive, so I can't.
Well, if a guy,
and they're-
I'll answer that. If a guy has no drive and the woman has a high drive, he should go get his testosterone levels checked, right? Because a guy
I was
who's
just gonna say it's
a
probably
guy
a
who's
health
healthy,
condition
a guy
happening
who's
right there.
healthy, he's
Yeah.
gonna want sex, you know.
Yeah.
But if he has no
or
sexual
he's super
drive,
stressed out,
Or-
or he's not eating well, he's not
or
sleeping.
even
Yeah.
vice versa. Like if the woman isn't having the same sex drive, like that's, I don't know. I mean,
I think what it comes down
then is there something wrong with the woman?
I think
She
what it
might
comes
not
down
be
to
as emotionally into the
Into it, yeah.
relationship if she's not
Yeah.
doesn't have that high sex drive, because
Mm-hmm.
when with my ex, he had a really high sex drive and I don't. I really don't care for sex, but with him, I was down to do whatever
Because
he
you
wanted
loved him.
every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, however many times.
And that's the design of monogamous love and marriage, is that you learn to love each other. And this idea of like sexual incompatibility, I think, is a total myth. I think it's a lie, and people believe it, and so they have sex before marriage. But people who have sex before marriage and sleep together or cohabitate actually have worse outcomes once married. They're more likely to divorce. Not a lot of people know that. That's what the social data says. But that's because when you're in it for life and you're in it to really love this person, be committed and learn them and do whatever you can for them, you learn pleasure with them. You learn how to love not just sex with them, but your entire life with them, and you work at it together.
I think
That's
it's
cute.
because when you're like monogamous, like when you're with someone longer, like just them, you learn to communicate like what you like and dislike in the bedroom, like
So
your
what do I say
pleasures.
if I like non-monogamy?
No, I'm saying like
You know what I mean?
no, but like I'm saying like like group? When you're with.
It's like, I love you and I want group sex.
Well, I think if
Let's
you
talk
want
that
to,
through.
if you want to cheat on somebody and you're married to them, I think you make the decision not to.
Yeah, and that's where I have different beliefs from religion, which is about sacrifice. I believe in honoring desires, and like, again,
do
not
too.
saying
I think
go
our-
out on a whim and just do whatever, but I think that actually is true love. Can you love me in my fullness? And in my fullness, I'm non-monogamous. In my fullness, I want to have sex with other people. In my fullness, I'm very sexual. If that's too much for you, I can't be with you, and I bless and release you.
See, I think you're making an identity out of your desires, but your identity
think
is
you are
not just how
too.
what you desire.
You're making your identity out of your desires. Just because mine are sexual, you're making that about me, but you make an identity out of your desires for monogamy, for marriage, for
So-
procreation. That's your identity.
I see
We
what
all
you're-
make our identities around our desires. It's not just for
I
sexually
think
awake
I
people.
think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. The question is, what desire? Will you be defined by your sexual impulse and urge, or will you be defined by something much bigger, a
or are you
transcendental
controlled,
like love?
or is your identity based on controlling your desire?
I
It's
think
like, to me, I think
it's
that's
about,
actually harmful.
It's about channeling it. It's about channeling
That's
it.
what I do. I channel it to all the people I love.